Good evening, everyone. Seth here, along with Chad Nuss, as we begin our V.A.A.S live session here in the studio at the Visual Arts Academy and studio. We are so glad you guys are joining us. Here in Louisville, Kentucky, it is rainy and quite nasty outside, but that's not going to stop us from creating some beauty inside. So we're getting all set up. We had a little bit of a delay. Normally, we like to get started at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but we're about 30 minutes behind schedule simply due we had some wonderful classes happening here. And Chad and I get carried away when we start teaching and instructing, and we went a little long, but we're so happy that you've joined us. We've changed it up a little bit today. Instead of working on my oil painting, I have a nice watercolor sample that I'm going to be working on today. And I'm going to kind of work through this and try to get this whole piece done in this setting. So I'm going to try to do this in an hour and a half, kind of get it pretty nice, pretty. And so you can follow along with me, grab your pencils, grab your papers, grab some paints, whatever you got going, and hopefully you can create with us this evening. And if you're in the Louisville area, stay safe. It is nasty weather outside. If you're joining us from all these other beautiful, wonderful locations, we hope you have better weather than what we've got going on now. So as Chad continues to get set up, I'm going to kind of walk you through what I've got. I've got a nice little watercolor sketchbook here. And if you guys can kind of see this, I've gone and drawn a feather that I actually was teaching in my current watercolor class and had that kind of going there. And so I'm going to walk through some layers and washes, and then maybe even dive into some inks and some quill use to do some really nice mark making. And boy, if you look at Chad's second screen over there, you're going to see his beautiful rendering from his reference cast. He's working on that. He's going to continue to draw that up, and we'll have him explain what he's working on there. But we're so glad you're joining us this evening. Let us know you're here. Let us know you've jumped on. Ask questions. We like it when you ask and get involved, and we hope that you're creating with us. So thanks for jumping on our V.A.A.S live session. We look forward to talking and chatting as we go throughout the whole evening. We look forward to having a good time with you guys tonight. Chad, you set up? You ready to go? What you thinking?
I'm trying. Sorry. We're a little bit behind. I'm trying to get everything how normally we do this before we do all this setup. But I have a class that goes right till 6, and I was talking with some of the parents and some things like that, and then didn't have a chance to do all the fine tuning details here. So yeah, but I'm happy to be on, happy to be drawn with you and with everyone online, and look forward to get back into this drawing here. So.
Well, and of course, you know, as I go to put up our second, I use our studio phone here as a second camera. And of course, as soon as I go to set this connect, there's an update. So we had to wait for the update to kind of get there and get some other things situated. But we are so glad that you're joining us this evening. And I'm going to adjust the lighting here a little bit. It's a little bit of a different setup for me, Chad, as I've got my palette here. And normally, you know, a lot of people don't get to see the palette that I'm working with. And so it's kind of weird for me to have this out, and so everybody can kind of see what's going on here. But I'm really excited for this painting today. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was a little distracted. So you're doing watercolor, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so I've changed it up today. I'm going to be doing a watercolor, but I'm going to do it a little bit different in the sense that I'm going to do watercolor washes, but I'm also going to do some pen and ink work. So I really have this illustrative style that I like to work with and do, where I'll do layers of watercolor, like a traditional watercolor, but then I'm going to come back on top with pen and ink, and I will use Dr. Martin's inks, which is an acrylic-based ink. I'll bring that out and show you guys here in just a little bit. But I use these Dr. Martin inks as a final layer, if you will. They're a little bit more potent. They're a little bit stronger. And then I come in with a quill, and I do my mark making on here. But the first thing I've got to do is I'm going to start with a wet on wet wash. And so I'm going to layer my paper with a nice wet palette, a wet brush, and start building up this wet on wet wash. And if you're following along at home, the great thing about these wet on wet washes is it can control where the pigment goes. And so it creates a barrier. The actual pigment itself, the water creates a barrier for the pigment itself. And if you're following along, I'm working with just a number 8 round brush right now and just saturating my paper as I go. But Chad, you're working on your drawing from reference cast, correct, sir?
Yes. Excuse me for one. And I'm still getting over my cold I had earlier this week. So every once in a while I get a little tickle in my throat and I have to cough, so I apologize. But yeah, so this is a cast reference drawing that I started during our last 8-week session with one of our students, and wasn't able to get it completed. But I do want to finish it because I'd like to do a series of these drawings as examples for our students and as a teaching tool. It's beneficial both to draw alongside the student, but also to have some pieces completed so they can kind of see where, kind of aim for kind of a goal, like, to see what a finished piece looks like. Not to say that this is the standard that they're trying to achieve, but just in the sense, like, you can actually finish a piece and this is what it looks like and this is the process.
Absolutely.
So that just is a very helpful tool. So I have one done, which I showed, a couple weeks ago, of cast reference of lips or mouth. And I'm doing this one of a hand. And I'm using only graphite on this one. I'm also utilizing one of the synthetic brushes and a paper stump for some blending. The last one I did of the lips, I didn't use a blender at all. And the main difference with that is if you don't use a blender, you tend to see some of the tooth of the paper comes through, and it's a little bit more, I don't want to say sketchy, because you can really get a lot of smooth transitions and gradients if you're really careful with it. But when you use a blender, it eliminates a lot of the pencil marks and gets the graphite into the grain of the paper. So there's a lot of nice, smooth transition. The only thing you have to be careful about is if you use it too much, then it can almost look a little smudgy. So you have to be very subtle and selective with how you use it. So anyways, all that to say, yes, I'm working on a cast drawing.
That's awesome. Are you using graphite or charcoal or both?
Yes, I was saying before, I'm just using graphite on this one. I did use a little tiny bit of charcoal on the shadow up in the left-hand corner, which, funny story about this, when I first started drawing this, I was using my cell phone as a light source, and it was kind of a 3/4 degree angle above. But we now have these fancy light boxes, which I can actually show you. I'll just do the camera there. You can see it in the corner. It's hard to see because there's so much light in it, so the camera's not really showing you. But the cast is in this box, and it's got a light above it. And so my light source changed, which means some of my shadows changed, but I didn't want to restart the drawing. So I'm just making some artistic innovation, I guess I could say.
Nice.
Because right now when I look at that cast, this shadow is no longer there, even though it was before. I'm keeping that shadow, and I'm just incorporating the other shadows to make it look natural. The reality is that this drawing is not going to be on display next to the cast that I drew. So as long as I make it look real enough to the eye, I'm fine. But I am trying to get it as realistic as possible. Not necessarily photorealistic, but I do want it to be really a nice, finished, very detailed drawing. So
I would use the word accurate. You want it to be an accurate drawing.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
That's one of the things I've been talking about a lot with some of my students is, it doesn't have to be photorealistic, but you want it to be accurate. And finding accuracy is a huge part of developing your skills, right? Because a lot of times you think what you're drawing is correct or close enough, right? We use that, close enough a lot. But what we really want to do is we want to be as accurate as we possibly can. And that makes a huge difference in the execution or the level of skill that you display with your accuracy. And that doesn't mean you always have to be as accurate as you can be, but it's definitely a skill set that helps you advance as an artist. Or at least I believe that. And I think you would probably agree with me as well.
Yeah, and I think there is something to be said about it is very difficult to get something very accurate, very close. It takes a lot of training and practice and skill. And even when I look at my drawing, I'm like, there are little things here and there that are a bit off that, I'll either adjust or work with or whatever. But it's just like in, the example I often go to is like with cooking. It's one thing to do some kind of like new technique or whatever that no one's ever heard of, but it's very different to learn, classic recipes and to do them well. And most people are not able to like graduate from culinary school or go on to like Michelin star restaurant if they don't know how to do the mother sauces, the classic sauces. And it's in the same way with drawing that sure, you can do abstract, and we talked about this before, but really you need to learn how to draw with accuracy. And once you can do that, then you can really explore other ways, other expressions and things like that. And it makes those expressions even better. So drawing with accuracy is a very difficult thing to learn. It takes a lot of time. But I think it's fundamental to being an artist in many ways.
I would agree. Well, I think it becomes a level of mastery. I often say it's you then have the ability to pick and choose, when you want to be able to create, like you said, a master sauce, right? Or go outside of that and create something completely different, or expand and try something different, right? You're not only trying something different because you can't create those other sauces, right?
That's right.
And I think that's part of the mastery of a medium, or the mastery of creating, artwork. And I think that's the beauty of growth as an artist. Because we all start somewhere, right? We all start at the beginning. Some have a little bit more advancement earlier than others. Others are starting a little bit later. Next week, we get to celebrate the 87th birthday of one of our students, and she is just now painting. And I tell you what, that's one of the greatest feelings in the world, right? She looked at me today, and I said, well, some of the artwork skills and techniques, they just take a little time. And she goes, we're going to have to expedite that process, Seth. And I said, okay, we're going to expedite that process as much as we can. But it's rewarding, because she knows that, it is a journey, and she knows that journey as a creator is different for her because of where she's starting in life. But boy, she brought in about 10 or 15 different paintings this evening, and it was exhilarating to see what she was doing.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And we are going to get to celebrate her birthday next week. She said, no candles. We don't want any fire hazards. I said, yes, ma'am.
And she's serious when she's doing all that work on her own, that she doesn't have to come in here and be told what to do. She just goes home and works on herself, which is kind of our goal. It's like, we want to teach and assist, but at the same time, we want you to explore yourself as well.
Well, and I just love all the stories that we get coming out of this academy, right? And one's really been kind of pulling at my heartstrings, which is a little bit surprising to me, is that, for the third time, I've had students tell me that this is assisting with a certain grieving process that they're going through.
Yeah.
And, when we initially launched the academy, I knew it would be helpful for a lot of people, right? Chad, we've talked about that extensively. But man, I didn't know that this would be something that would help so many people during that process of grief, of losing a loved one or a cherished one, or things like that. And it really just hits me hard when they come and they go, this is what I'm doing to help me through this. And quite amazing. I'm going to see if I can get this guy done today.
So tell me your reflections on using watercolor versus acrylic versus oil. What are some things that are your favorite about each one of those versus others? And if you could be so bold, what is your favorite medium of the three to use to work in?
Oh boy. Well, so I think, there's a lot of similarities between all of them, and learning one will assist with the other to certain extents in a lot of ways. I think watercolor, for me personally, is probably the most challenging, because you have to really be conscious of your layers. You have to be conscious of your layering and of your whites, right? You have to pre-plan where you want your negative space, where you want your whites, because the lightest light is always going to be your paper. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't come back in with acrylics or other pigments and things like that, but then it's no longer truly a watercolor. And so you really want to plan out the coloring that you have. And I think that's a little bit of a challenge for myself, because I like to just kind of sometimes dive in and just go. But I think watercolor is really about pigment control and fluidity, in the sense that your water is not only your medium of movement, right, creating the movement of the pigment, it is also a contributor to your value and your overall chroma. And so, working light to dark is kind of the golden rule, but there's so many different ways that you can work with it. I work very illustratively, or what I call very illustratively. But I think that watercolor has become something I've loved. I don't think I was patient enough, Chad, in my early years with watercolor. And I didn't really appreciate the transparencies and the values. But I've grown to absolutely love it. It is very quickly becoming one of my personal favorite mediums. It could be because I have an amazing watercolor class. I don't know. That group of ladies is just absolutely spectacular. So much fun to teach. So they make it very enjoyable, which is, I'm being very truthful, right? When you get to be part of a class and it's very fun and enjoyable, that translates into the medium, right? That makes a difference. So some of it could be that, but I think I'm just a lot more patient now. And, with watercolor, it's transparencies. And you can get transparencies with glazes and oils, and you can do, washes with acrylics and things like that. But there's a certain sensitivity that happens with watercolor that you don't get in the other mediums. And that's vice versa too. Like oils, I think there's a richness that you don't get with some of the other mediums. And oils, it's constantly wet, right? So your pace can change. You can work at a slower pace if you want. Whereas watercolors, you have a certain wet on wet or a dry brush. Acrylics are the most versatile. You ask kind of, what do I think about certain things? Acrylics are the most versatile. You can work very opaquely, but then you can also work very transparently. And that allows you to carry over some of the tools and techniques from oils to acrylics and some of the tools and techniques from watercolor into acrylics. But I also think acrylics are not the most organic, right, by nature, if that makes sense, Chad. Like watercolor is more organic naturally. Acrylic paint is a lot more synthetic, right, because the binder is a synthetic binder. And acrylics are brilliant. I love them. They're amazing. But ever since I've started really honing in, maybe since we've opened the academy, perhaps, watercolor and oils has trumped acrylics for me. I absolutely love oils now, and I absolutely really enjoy watercolor.
Awesome.
And sorry, I'm kind of focused in on here. Sometimes it's easy to speak and paint at the same time, and then other times I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. Keep hearing that. It's just, man.
It's almost kind of nice.
It's nice, but it's like day 5 of this. Like,
yeah,
so much water.
I saw a meme that I thought was funny, and you'll get this here if you live in Kentucky or the surrounding areas. It says, I've got to drive to the Ark experience because I'm going to have to borrow that Ark.
Yeah. Especially this week. It's been insane.
It has been a lot. They got the flood walls up. They got all kinds of stuff going. And I just stay safe out there, guys. Be safe, be smart. Keep an eye on if you're in a floodplain, keep an eye on it. Hopefully you've already taken some precautions. Be careful with the tornadoes.
Did you see they canceled Thunder of Louisville this year?
No, they didn't.
They did because of floods.
Oh no, I did not see that.
I just saw it today, and then one of the parents mentioned it as well.
Wow. I wonder when the last time they canceled Thunder over Louisville was.
I don't know. I figured they would just like reschedule it for a different weekend, but
well, they only have so many weekends before Derby, and I'm sure they have to have airspace, and they always have the planes, right? They always have the air show.
A lot more. It's above my pay grade. A lot more that goes into planning than I realize. That's for sure.
You just hate it because you know how much time and energy and everything's gone into that. I mean,
and how much money they probably lose.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh. But they put all the flood walls up, I think, haven't they?
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Well, the good news is with V.A.A.S Live, you can stay indoors.
There you go.
You don't have to get out and drive around. You can join us live from your living room, from your TV, from your bed. from your studio at home. You don't have to get out. You can join us from wherever you are, whether you're in this rain or not, locally or regionally or nationally. Heck, we've had some people from all over the world join us, and we're so glad when you guys do. We're grateful that you guys are here. We're so thankful that you guys get to create with us, and we're doing some different stuff tonight. We're working on some different projects than what we normally do, and it is nice. Dun, dun, dun. So, Chad, you had another idea for another class, which I thought was really cool, really interesting. So we had talked about, I think last time, a couple of the new sessions that you were talking about, but you also came up with another one that I think sounds really intriguing. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Talking about the sketchbook one?
Yeah. I think this was awesome.
Yeah, so I think it would be great to have a class on how to keep a sketchbook, because that is one question that I often get from students is just like, I don't know how to practice. I don't know what to draw like when I'm on my own, and so I usually give them like more personalized advice or whatever, but there are some general techniques or approaches that you can take to keeping a sketchbook. So, it might sound like a class like that is like keeping a sketchbook. That just sounds like, well, I'll just do that on my own. But I think it's one of those classes that can really help kind of mentor artists and how to really learn how to learn themselves, So I was just thinking in terms of usually what I tell people is find something that you either don't like to draw or something that it's a challenge to draw or something you don't normally draw. And that's what you should really practice. Because for most people, when they think of a sketchbook, what they'll do is they'll draw, they'll just kind of have a haphazard approach. They'll just kind of like, well, I'll draw whatever. But I always tell people when you do that, you typically will gravitate towards things that you already know how to draw. And you often have this thought in your mind that, and I don't know where this started, but we tend to think of sketchbooks as like the rock stars of the artist portfolio. It's like, oh, let's see what their sketchbook looks like, and we just expect these amazing drawings. But the reality is, the point of the sketchbook is to work out all your bad ideas. Like that's the place where you have freedom to make bad drawings. And I think for a lot of people, they think, no, the sketchbook, I got to put all my best work in. And I fall into that. I have a hard time keeping a sketchbook some seasons of life because I don't want people to see the bad drawings. So I'll, keep them separate or whatever. But I think a sketchbook is really, really helpful to work out ideas or work out things that you're, not really great at. I was talking to a student today, and one of the things she had mentioned was that noses are very difficult for her to draw. And I said, well, you would take your sketchbook and you would either do an entire sketchbook just drawing noses, or at least a section of it, and you would draw, the anatomy of a nose, noses at different angles, noses on faces with different expressions, different kinds of noses, because everyone has different noses. They all look different. So just work on different shapes and things like that. And, there's all kinds of ways that you could do a class like that, whether it could be, an 8-week class. You could say, well, here's 8 topics that we're going to work on, and you'll take we'll work on those in class, and you'll take them home and you'll continue that. Or it could be like, come to the class with a personal goal in mind, something that you want to improve on. And so we'll design the sketchbook activities around that. So, for example, I've had students say, well, I just need to work on figure drawing. So that would be a perfect thing. We said, okay, well, you're going to use your sketchbook to work on figure drawing. And so here are 8 different assignments or 8 different exercises you can do. And we would work on one of those or whatever. So that by the end of the course, I was just thinking about it the other day, if you did, an hour a week in your sketchbook and an hour and a half in class, quick math, what is that? Like almost 20 hours of art you're recording. You could do it even more. You could say an hour every day. So that, 7 times 5, 56 hours plus another 8 hours, 64 hours of drawing in a sketchbook. That's a lot of art that you can get done. And so I think that would be a great opportunity for students to learn how to become a better artist on their own outside of the class. So great opportunity.
Well, and I think that creates, good habits, right? As an artist, drawing every day, sketching every day, creating a routine for your craft. It's just like fitness, or anything like that, or sports. When we think about these other elements, you talk about routine-based behavior, right? You talk about, it's healthy to exercise every day, to move every day, or even readers. They're like, oh, read a chapter a day, right? Or, even meditation, we'll meditate, or, yoga. All these other things we think of, well, we should do them daily, right? It's a daily practice. I think that should be applied to exactly what you're saying as well. And I want to go back, though. I thought you brought up something really interesting about the idea of why did sketchbooks become this finalized work of art, tome, of excellence, right? And I think Da Vinci killed us all with his sketchbooks. Because everything he seemed to put in any of them were just, and now I know that's not true, because I know there's some in there that are not as, amazing as whatever, but I think it's more because I think it's the portfolio system, honestly, of the last 30 or 40 years, which is, oh, well, you must have a still life of X, or you need to have a drawing of this. And so what ended up happening is everybody who submitted 20 to 25 pieces to an art university, an art school, or for a scholarship, they all end up looking and being the same, because it was about a skill-based or a technique, and it didn't become about the individual. So then all of a sudden, when you look in somebody's sketchbook, you see into them as an artist, you see into who they are, and there's an energy and an excitement and a passion behind it, that it was exhilarating to see that, rather than just templated artwork that most students, achieved. But then it became this thing of, oh, well, we see this energy and this cool, well, now it needs to be polished. And I agree with you, Chad, that it's not about the polish. It was about the insight into the artists themselves that became so exhilarating to see in a sketchbook.
Yeah, because you want to see them working out ideas. And not every idea is going to work. Not every idea is going to be awesome. Not every sketch is going to be how you want it to be. And I think people get so afraid of, showing work that is not. And I get it that way too. I totally get it. Like, I don't want to see if I was telling you the other day, I was teaching that heads, hands, and feet class, and we got 2 really talented girls in that class, and one of them was sitting there. We were doing sketches, and her sketches were better than mine. And I was looking at my sketch, and I was just having an off day. Like, my drawing, I couldn't draw a circle to save my life, and I was like doing these. We were doing the constructs of the head, and then like Loomis method, and we were turning the head in different ways. And every time I looked down, I was like, it was lopsided, or I couldn't, you just have those days where, you have some days which are great. You could draw and whatever, just flourish. It's amazing. But most days you're just like, man, this is horrible. Well, there was one particular day, and I was looking over at her drawings. I was like, she should be teaching this class at this point. Like, you know exactly what I did. I flipped that paper over. I didn't want her to see it. I don't want anyone to see it. And so I wrestle with that just like everyone else does. It's like there's just something about, you want to produce things that wow people. You want people to be impressed with what you're doing. It's just like a natural human, I think, desire or whatever. It kind of goes back to that thing, like, they want to be liked, they want to be respected, they want other people to be in awe of them. And so we're always wanting to make drawings that are amazing. And so the sketchbook kind of kills that, because it forces you to put things in there that you're not going to be great at, but you're working at. You're wanting to become great at that, and the only way you can is through constant practice. So yeah, I agree with you with the Leonardo da Vinci thing, and I also think, like, just throughout history, people have caught on, like, well, let's see the person behind the artist, and then they think, well, let's go to sketchbooks, and they'll pick the masters. And it's like, well, of course, their drawings are going to be amazing, But to your point, there's a couple, like I have Leonardo's sketchbook, like the reproduction book. I forgot who published it. It's amazing, but it shows like that, a cross section of his sketchbooks, and most of them are amazing. But there's a few in there that, like, if his name wasn't Leonardo and you just saw this, like, you would not know that this is Leonardo da Vinci. Like, it's just not the quality that you assume of someone at that level, because it's a sketchbook. It's him working out ideas,
Right.
And I think because we assign names to sketches, doesn't matter what the quality is. We're just like, oh, that's, it's amazing. It's a Leonardo or it's a Picasso or whatever. And it's like, well, if that name was associated, would you still feel that way about that drawing? But anyways, yeah, I think that's the challenge of the sketchbook, I think. So.
Well, I still think that's an exceptional class. And part of the reason I think it's so exceptional is because keeping a sketchbook is a lifelong journey, right? And it's something that changes with you no matter what stage of life you're at, no matter what skill level you're at. I still have one of my early high school sketchbooks, and there's some drawings in there I don't want to show people, right? Because, I see some of our high school students and I'm like, geez, they were a lot further along than I was when I was in high school. But it's such a joy for me to go back and look at it. Like it's a time warp into who you were at that time and your interest at the time and what you were psychologically and mentally going through. And, it's like a journal, but it's more, right? Or at least maybe it's because we're artists, but it feels like it's more to me because it's really words are words and this is image based, right? There's a little extra something to it, a little extra oomph to it. And I love the idea of getting to teach people, because I literally had a student the other day. The reason I get excited for this, Chad, is I had a student the other day that was literally blown away when I talked about like blank page syndrome. They were like, yes, that's exactly what I struggle with. Like I buy a brand new sketchbook and I'm terrified to, write in it or draw in it because I don't want to ruin it. And I'm like, well, you have blank page syndrome. You have this idea that you don't want to mess this up. And the only way you're going to mess it up is by not using it, right? You know what I mean? Like that's the only thing is you bought it with the intent and the purpose of creating in it. And so we need to use it to create in it. That's what it was intended to be used for, right? When you purchased it. Now, if you purchase it, you just want it on the mantle to be pretty. That's a whole nother thing, right? The intent. But I think that the goal is to really, hone in and learn how to use a sketchbook. And there are some tips and tricks, but I think more than anything, some people just want somebody to kind of guide them through it. You know what I mean? Teach me how to not be afraid of the blank page. Teach me how to not be afraid of messing the sketchbook up. And I think one of the great ways of doing that is just to do.
Yeah, I think they need permission from someone to be like, it's okay to mess up. It's okay that drawing didn't look as good as you hoped it would. I mean, I run into that when we do critiques in our class. Students, like, you can almost feel them like drawing up into a shell when you say, well, this is good, but maybe this needs, it's okay. Like, I wrestle with that constantly. I'm doing critique on myself all the time. I'm drawing. I'm constantly evaluating. Is this right? Does this look good? And there's it. Yeah. And so you need someone to come alongside and be okay with your faults. I mean, that's the great thing about friendships and marriages and community and all that, is that you're in a safe place where you can fail and still be respected and loved. And that's kind of what you need as an artist, like a place where you can try things that you don't normally try. And other people understand, oh, he's or she is an amazing artist. That didn't work, but that's okay, because that doesn't define who they are. They're trying something new, which is better than them just doing the same thing over and over again. So, yeah.
And we push a lot of our students. I think you hit the nail on the head when you were talking earlier. And if you didn't catch this, you may want to go back and listen, because Chad articulates it beautifully. If you go home, you're going to tend to find the things that you like to draw and or things that you draw or paint or do well. And that's okay, because that's kind of the thing, we block the things that we succeed at. But a lot of times for you to advance as an artist, I mean, not all the time, right? Some people just can advance in different ways. But a lot of times you need to get out of your comfort zone and be pushed to try different things and to do different things to get you to expand and then hone in and grow from there. And I think a lot of times that sense of community, that sense of friendship or camaraderie helps get you past the fear of it and pushes you to do it. We have one student who I'm hoping he'll potentially jump on as a guest someday, who he's told us, he's looked you and I in the face and said, I would never paint this at home. I would never do this on my own, because it's not something that he really has an interest in painting, and or it's challenging for him. And yet, what did he tell you? He said, I think, and I'm going to paraphrase here, you can correct me if I'm way off base, but I think he said, but I'm so glad I did because I've gotten better because of it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you got to get out of that comfort zone.
Well, I may have mentioned this on the live before, but I just remember towards the end of one of our class, one of the parents said to me about the student that, she said, I just don't understand, work on this drawing, and said, the stuff that she does at home is just so amazing. This isn't quite the same with what she can normally do. And I was not quick enough on my feet to know how to answer that at the time because I hadn't thought through it. And I didn't take it personally or anything. I was just like, well, she's working or whatever. But I thought about it afterwards, and I was like, I know why. Because at home, she's drawing the things that she's good at. She's drawing the things she's comfortable with. So yeah, the artwork that she has at home, the sketch she has at home, it's going to look amazing. And then she's coming in here and doing a still life, which she's never done a still life. So her still life's not going to look that good, for the first time. I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean the reality is it's not going to be as good as her other drawings. And I didn't think to say that. I hadn't processed that through enough to know how to answer her in that. But now I know. I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense because she's not doing the things she normally does in our class, which is actually a good thing because we're challenging the students to do something. We're stretching them to go beyond what they normally do. And that's where you.
Well, and I think, the other thing is, and we've talked about this a little bit as well, is that there is a certain anxiety and animosity that kind of comes with painting in the studio, right? When you're at home, and you articulated this also, I believe, is you're in your comfort zone, in a physical space. This is more of your initial comfort zone of where you are and where you like to typically create. And so I've had students express, they're like, I just get a little anxious being around other students or seeing Chad's work or seeing your work. But ultimately they break through that, right? They persevere through that and they come out better on the other side because now they're communicating and articulating and conversing. And I think it's even more rewarding, the sense of community that you get once you break through that barrier. But initially, I think it can be very challenging because you're like, oh my gosh, it's out there for everyone to see right now in the middle of class.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But I do think it's healthy. I think it's very good. Obviously, we believe that because we run the studio in the academy. But at the same time, I know that that's helped me. I know that that's helped you. It's pushed us to work on our work. It's pushed some of our other students that participate in a lot of our classes to get better. It's helped Thomas with his work, and we like that sense of, I almost said urgency. I don't necessarily know if it's urgency, but I guess it is. Classes are only an hour and a half. So there is a sense of urgency when you're creating at the time in the studio because you're like, well, normally at home, I get X amount done in this amount of time. And there is a sense of urgency when you're in the studio because how far am I going to get? What is everybody else looking at? How is theirs looking, right? You look over your shoulder, you see what they've got. And there is a sense of urgency in the sense that you want to complete something to have that pride and that sense of reward, like you said, right, that we all yearn for. And so, Chad, I'm going to take a second and kind of articulate what I'm doing here.
I was actually just about to ask you about your process, what you're doing right there. So
perfect. What I've got is I've gone ahead and done my initial wash layers in my watercolor. And I wish you guys could see this. This camera is not quite as close, but I'll see if I can lift it up here for you guys. And so what I've done is I did my initial washes, and you can't see this background very well, but it's actually if I may say so myself, a beautiful light lilac. And it's a very nice wet on wet wash. And then I've done my layering of my feather here. But then what I'm doing is I'm coming back in and I'm using a traditional quill pen with a terracotta acrylic ink, India ink. And it's Dr. Martin's. It comes in a whole bunch of different kinds. I'm not going to show that one because it'll spill over, but you guys can kind of see this here. The Dr. Martin's ink, they're fantastic. I've used them for years. And I'm using this as an ink for a quill, and I'm layering this back on. Once I get that done, I'll let it sit for a little bit, let it dry a little bit, and then I may come back in with even more washes. But this is a great technique I like because it creates really strong line work. And I think the line work works really, really well with the watercolor washes. And of course, it's a combination for me, Chad, of drawing and painting, right? It's the painting with the brush of the watercolor, but then it's the drawing and the sketch ability of the quill. And I love that texture. I did something similar on a piece like this one here that you guys can see from this floral, but a lot of that was brush work. So a lot of this was not exactly quill based. It was brush based, but this one is definitely more of that quill, that design, that hard ink, the hard scratchiness of it, if you will. And I don't know if you guys like this or not, but I kind of like having my entire setup on camera. It's kind of neat and kind of fun to have that.
That looks really good. I remember that one time we tried to do with me drawing a home page. For whatever reason, we could not get the lighting right. The lighting looks great.
Well, I think it helps. I'm right next to a window. When we were doing yours, we couldn't get you positioned close enough to a window because of an outlet or something like that. And so even though it's raining outside, I still have some natural light still, even though it's almost 7:15. And I think that's helping. And, it is a little bit of a different. But so here's something that I talk a lot about with my watercolor students and even my painting students. Right now, I get so excited that I want to overwork this when I need to let this sit and dry. I need to make sure that this sits into the paper, it secures itself into the paper, because if not, I'll reignite some of these pigments and I'll lose some of the work that I have. So I have to be really patient and understand that what is wet, what is dry, and to be kind of conscious of what's happening around some of these areas, because I do want to come in and do a little bit more wash. I do want to do a little bit more work around here. But I also don't want to reignite the pigments that I just did with the quill, or I don't want to ignite some of these other under layers. So I've got to be really patient with that because I don't want to lose all the wonderful work that I've done. And that would be a challenge for me because I'd get very frustrated. And so I want to be patient and not lose some of those washes yet. Now I'm going to come back in with more wash, but I've got to be conscious of not reigniting too much that it doesn't sit appropriately. And that is a challenge of when to know to be patient and let it sit, and when to just continue to work. Because if you're trying to achieve a wet on wet, you have to work at a certain speed, right? At a certain pace. And so that can be somewhat of a challenge. All of you guys that have joined us, we're so thankful. DC Watercolors, thanks for jumping in. I'm going to get some of these names wrong. Kevin Mercer, thank you so much. Cindy, thanks for Bluesy, thanks for jumping in. We've got a whole bunch, guys. Avatar Angel, we're so glad you joined us again. Good to see you out here. Everybody that's on Twitch, thank you guys for joining us on Twitch. Again, I'm Seth Jones, co-founder and instructor here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. Along with me is our master savant of drawing and just intellectual brilliance, instructor Chad Nuss. I mean, you don't get to have a beard like that, guys, unless your brain is so big your hair has to fall out. So we're incredibly grateful to have Chad Nuss along here with us tonight. I don't know where that came from, Chad. I'm sorry, but that's going to be recorded for all history. but we're going through with it. Chad is working on a beautiful drawing from Reference Cast. He's kind of guided us through it. And I'm working on a nice, simple little watercolor here that I did with some of my classes and my students for a study. We're so glad that you guys have joined us. Ask us questions. Tell us what you're working on. We want to know what you're drawing or what you're painting or what you've been excited about as an artist lately. We're also going to continue to just discuss all things art history, theory, all these kind of things about our joy of teaching and instructing that has got us so passionate, and along with a lot of our students here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. So guys, thanks for joining tonight. Dive in, ask some questions. Everybody that's joined us on all the different platforms, we thank you.
You know, two things I would say. First of all, anytime you want to call me a savant, you feel free to make fun of me after that, because that is such a high. Whatever, that's fine. I'll take it. I made a promise to myself that when I got to a certain age where the hair on the top of my head started falling out, I would start growing it out the bottom of my head. So that's kind of what's happened here. So, no, I mean, you mentioned about just talking about like teaching and those kind of things. And recently, I found a video that I just started watching. So I haven't finished it, so I won't reference it because it might turn out to be horrible. But I started watching this video on the old style of Renaissance masters and how they taught or how they learned. And I'm just at the beginning, like 10 minutes of the video. It's like a 40-minute video, but I'm very fascinated to learn more about the old system, the old Renaissance system of, or classical atelier system of learning how to draw and how to create. It's not that we are, you know, necessarily following that format specifically, but I think there's a lot to be learned from it, and I'm quite fascinated by it. And today I mentioned to one of my students to encourage her, you know, you're having a hard time with drawing a skull and a head and face and all that. I said, just remember that back in the day during the classical system, you would be set up with a master artist and you would be an apprentice for 5, 8, 10 years of just drawing casts and drawing from masterpieces before you even touched your own. Even then, even before that, you would paint sections of the master's paintings, and it would take years before you got to that. So it was like, I was telling that because she was getting so frustrated with her drawing, and I was like, you're only in here for 8 weeks per class. Like, don't think that you're just going to automatically pick this up like it's going to be nothing. I mean, these masters spent decades of time learning their crafts. And I can even say from my own experience, you know, I've been drawing, I'm 48, I'll be 49 this year. I've been drawing probably 40 years. I mean, since I was a young kid, I remember. So it takes a long time to learn these skills. But I just bought on Amazon today, actually, Charles Barks drawing, what is it? His course. It was like a 300-page book, and it just goes through. And we have the other one we bought where it's got his plates, and then you can draw from plates he has, like with casts and things like that. But this other book is his actual course, and so I'm really excited to learn that, like what he used, and I forget what year he was from. But
yeah, I can't think of it.
I'll look that up while people are watching you do your watercolor. Look it up real quick.
Yeah, which I'm butchering right now, but that's okay. This is this is a sketchbook, as Chad talked about. The idea is that this is where I'm working through some things. I'm having some fun with it. I really enjoy what I've got going on, but I'm also kind of not happy with some of my mark making, which is okay. But I'm working through it, and I think hopefully I'll be very happy, trusting the process. You'll hear me say that quite a bit. And, you know, people go, well, is it a very specific process? Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just, I don't want to say happenstance, but sometimes it's just trusting the technique and trying some different things, because then I may use it again in a final painting, right? I may come back to it at a later painting go, oh, I've done this before. Oh, yes, I've tried this. This is the result that I wanted out of this painting. And so it's fun to grow your skills in that way, right? Like to know that I can advance through experimentation and not just known technique, if that makes sense, Chad. You know, it's not, oh, well, this is the only way I've ever done it. It's the only way I'm ever going to do it. No, I'm going to use my sketchbook like you talked about and try some different stuff and see what happens. And, you know, I think that a lot of times we can get some really fun results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's what's that?
I've got to let this dry. So if I keep going right now, I'm going to overwork it. So I've got to give it a few minutes and let it set.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm saying his name right. Charles Bargue or Bark. It's Bargue. So either way, and yeah, it was a drawing course from the late 19th century, and it was a way for students. It's got like 200 lithographs, and it's got a reprint of their entire course. And it's something that students would take, and then so they would draw from casts and antique examples, and then from there would go on to drawing from paintings. Excuse me, this cold is. Hold on. Still giving me tickle in my throat sometimes. So yeah. Anyways, it was just fascinating to me, and I often think, just as a teacher, I think, how can I improve? And as a teacher, like just my philosophy of teaching, that kind of thing. So I'm very interested to learn from history and from these other masters how they went about the teaching process as well. So
I think it's awesome. I think, you know, it falls very in line with the statement I love, which is ancora imparo. Still, we are learning. We're always going to be learning. We're always going to be growing. And I think, you know, you and I both agree that we learn from our students a lot, right? How to articulate things, how to re-say things, how to communicate, you know, a technique or a skill in a different way, because you can say it 150 times, but that 151st student comes in and you go, they're not getting it. I got to figure out a new way to do this. And sometimes you go, boy, that 151st way was better than the 150 times I said it before. And I think that's really exciting as a teacher, because you go, woo, I've just gotten better, right? It's like a little happy dance in your head.
Yep. Well, you know, another thing I keep going back to is, you know, you can lecture, which there's a time and a place for that. You can look at examples from art history, and that's good too. But really, the best way to learn is just to do it. And so there's a lot of classes where I'll have the students, for a majority of that class, just draw. Like, you know, I'll teach them a principle, and then I'll say, okay, for the next hour, we're just going to draw. We're going to practice that principle. And, you know, so they experience a lot of critique. So as they're drawing, I'll come by and I'll stop them. And I'll say, okay, I like what you're doing here, but maybe shift here, or just notice this measurement here is a little bit off, or whatever. And for a lot of students, that's hard to hear, but at the same time, it vastly improves what they're doing. You know, it's like the other day during our drawing class, we were drawing a still life, and I'm sitting next to them drawing the same stuff as they are. And my first thing I told them, I was like, okay, first of all, you're only going to be able to use a 4H pencil right now. You can't touch anything darker than that. And it was really hard for them. And I said, well, the reason why I'm doing that is because most of the time, when they be drawing, they want to go in with the dark. They want to put in the darks. They want to put in a dark outline. I'm like, no, just chill out. The dark lines and the dark shapes, because once you put those dark shapes in there, they're going to be really hard to remove if you made a mistake. So instead, you need to build layer upon layer upon layer of tones. And from there, you're going to get a nice, soft, natural look to your drawings. But if I just gave them a slide and a picture and said, well, here's the principle, they wouldn't catch that. And actually have to sit down and spend the hour and do it, you know. And I think for a lot of students, that's very difficult, because they're being forced to do something they don't normally do. Another example is I would show them, don't hold the pencil like you normally do, because people draw like they're going to write, you know. And I said, no, you need to handle it like a stick, you know, like a baton, and keeps you very loose. And it's really hard at first for students if they're not used to that.
Yes, it is.
And I'll look over within like 10 minutes and they're back doing this. I'm like, no, get back doing this. And they don't realize that actually drawing like this, you can actually have just as much or even more control over drawing. And it just takes practice for them to get to that point. And so, yeah.
Well, it's funny. I teach that in our Intro to Art, which is a 4 weeks intro session, right? It's a day of drawing, day of acrylics, oils, and watercolor. And I show them how to flip their pencil in their hand. And they struggle with it. It's because we're trained to hold a pencil a certain way from youth, right? This is how you write your name. This is how you write your alphabet. This is how you utilize this tool, right? It's like, this is the only way they know how to operate that mechanically. And then, but after you see them use it for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and they don't flip back, all of a sudden you can see that they're able to build layers. They're able to create texture. They're actually able to control the pressure of the pencil more, right? Because a lot of people don't realize that it's partially that pressure that you're applying from your hand into the paper that gives you the value, right? And, you and I discuss a lot. It takes drawing from only mark making into sculpture building, right? You're being very sculptural with your application of the graphite. And that's when you start to achieve a different level of rendering, right? Of chiaroscuro, of sculpting. And, but it's funny. I'm not teasing any of my students that have been here. Don't come in next week, guys, and be like, oh, you were talking about me. No, I was talking about all of us, because when you first flip that pencil over in your hand, it's awkward, right? But I also talk about, Chad, that when you hold it like you traditionally do when you're writing your letters, your range of motion comes from your wrist. It only comes from your wrist. Whereas when you flip it around, you have the range of motion of your shoulder, your elbow, and your wrist, right?
Yeah.
And you're able to create better movement with the tool that's in your hand. And when they start seeing that, when they start seeing their shapes come together, or when they start seeing their shading develop a little bit stronger, it's like a light bulb goes off, like, oh yeah, I got to be conscious. Now that doesn't mean you can't flip it back like a normal pencil, but it means that you have multiple ways of using the tool in your hand that maybe you didn't realize before, and it can help you with your application and success.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's interesting to watch them, right? Like I've seen some people, they end up holding it like a drummer, and they're like, and it's like, whoa, okay, maybe a little bit gentler, maybe a little bit softer, like maybe a Q-tip going in the ear if you're holding that, which apparently you're not supposed to do. Please don't do that. That's not an endorsement to use Q-tips in your ears. It actually says do not put those in your ears. Just saying, don't write me, don't give me that kind of notice. But it does. It's a softer approach, if you will.
Yeah.
I feel like you have to put disclaimers on anything you say anymore. Well, I'm hoping my paper's still a little saturated. I'm going to give it just a little bit longer, guys. But I'm actually feeling pretty good about it, Chad. I think it's a beautiful little exercise. I think it's nice. I like it, but I want to add something to it yet. And I don't really know what yet. It's very singular. But it was a fun little exercise here. But I think I'm going to do some additional mark making, perhaps. And I may come in with this quill and do some mark making. This Bombay terracotta color is brilliant from Dr. Martin's inks. I'm absolutely in love with it. It is a beautiful pigment, beautifully saturated, and I am absolutely in love with it. But I don't know what I'm going to go for here. I'm just going to go for it. If you guys are watching and we get any kind of secret weather alerts, please let us know, because I don't know if Chad and I would know about them here, because we are just we are zoned in. We are just creating. Hopefully you're creating along with us. And don't forget, if you are local, Thursday night, typically we didn't have one this past week due to spring break, but typically Thursday nights we have drop-in figure drawing sessions. You can come and join us. It's $20 to attend. That helps us cover the models. We do have different models that come in and model for us, which is brilliant. We're so grateful. But come and join us. Come and draw. Figure drawing is definitely challenging, very difficult, but incredibly rewarding. The advancements that you'll get from doing it are massive. That's part of the reason we dedicate a Thursday evening, which is a prime time slot for classes. We know that this is something that we hope all of us should be doing and working on. And so you guys can come in and join us over here in historic Middletown with some clothed figure drawing. It's absolutely brilliant. I think a lot of our students that come in and initially, it's a little intimidating, Chad, right? It's a little intimidating, but boy, by the second or third time, the advancements are huge, don't you think?
Yeah, they fall into the sketchbook syndrome because you're drawing and you're drawing alongside everyone else, and it's usually the thing that challenges most people. So they feel like, well, my drawing's not that good, and everyone's seeing it, and they get very self-conscious. But you realize everyone's struggling the same as you are, so it's not really that big a deal as much as we think it is. And then they end up really enjoying it back. So yeah, for sure, it's a great time, and definitely super valuable as an artist.
I just know that for me, and obviously there's a lot where I don't always get to draw on those, but even for me, it's just I love getting to see everybody each week. A lot of our participants aren't taking 8-week classes with us, or not able to take 8-week classes or an intro to art session, but it's so fun to get to see them, right? It's always wonderful to get to see Terry's face when she comes in and talks about her new drawing project or what she's working on. The sense of community at those Thursday night drop-in drawing sessions, I think, are just so much fun. And I encourage everybody that is out and about, stop in, take a look. If you're an artist and you're looking to find some other art friends that are going to be just as passionate and excited about what you're working on, we're the place for you. I mean, this is a great place to get involved in and be a part of, and to kind of find your tribe, so to speak, or your sense of community. We're so grateful for everybody that's been involved and what everybody gets excited about and everybody's doing. And, it's also nice and rewarding for us, selfishly as well, because we get to be around other artists, Chad, right? We're around students a lot, but when on those Thursday night drop-in drawings, you're just creating alongside everybody. You get a chance to just be an artist again and to draw with everybody else.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's one of my favorite parts about it is, as much as I'm trying to help lead with that and direct students and help them out and everything, we get to draw as well. So it's, I love that part about it.
Well, I hope everybody's having a wonderful evening. This has been actually very therapeutic for me. I've been very grateful to have this and to work on a different project. I've been struggling a little bit with my oil painting, so it's nice to kind of change it up a little bit. And the only way I'm really kind of struggling with it is the sense that I want to get further along. But I know I have to be patient. I know I have to go slow and really mix out my paints. I decided that I needed to take a little bit more time working through my color creation. And I wanted to really slow down, hone in on it, really digest what I needed for the painting to be successful. And so I'm going to spend a little bit more time creating pigments for this next go around and honing in on it and trying to be as successful as I can. But it's one of those things where you don't want to take a break from it for too long, right? Because then you lose the energy moving into it also. So I'm going to be bouncing back to that pretty soon. But that's why I really wanted to be able to do this this one-off kind of watercolor piece tonight. And I think it's been a lot of fun, actually. I've really enjoyed putting a timer on it, if you will, right? Like, okay, we have an hour and a half. Here we go. Let's see what we can get done.
Yep. Yeah, I will often do that, switch to a different piece, and the danger of that is, like you said, you just kind of put it off for a while, and you kind of lose your passion for it. I guess I don't know. You just get involved in some other projects, and then you look over, and you're like, man, I started this and just never really got back to it. So I've got several pieces that I've started and kind of fell into that, and then went back to, and it just takes forever to get them done. Yeah, I mean, it is good though to change it up a bit, give yourself a little variety.
If anybody out there is a gamer, it's kind of like when you played a game for 20 to 30 hours, just got comfortable with all the controls, all the buttons, all the moves, and then you jump into another game, and then you get comfortable with that one, and you try to go back to the previous one, and you're like, oh man, it's going to take way too long to get this figured out. I'm just not going to play it anymore. You know what I mean? Like you're no longer in the groove. You no longer understand the game, the game mechanics. And you're like, oh, yep, well, that doesn't feel the same as it did when I first started playing. So it's kind of that same regard. If you're, at least in my opinion, if you're a gamer out there and you're getting into art, it's kind of like that.
Yeah, I have a hard time with the patience aspect of it too, and I mentioned that to you a couple weeks ago because I do like to work on bigger pieces. The downside of that is they just take so long, and so it's very easy. Impatient, we're tired of working on the same thing, and you can have a tendency to just kind of not necessarily give up on a piece, because there's none that I shouldn't say that. There's been a few, but there's none currently that I'm willing to just like give up on. But you do go through seasons where you're just like, oh man, I've worked on that so long already, and I feel like it's still got so much work left to do on it. It can get a little frustrating and defeating, but you made a really good response, and it was, yeah, but the final result is worth it. You know, if you stick to it and you get, you know, especially a bigger project done, whether it's a large drawing or finishing, you know, a comic book or finishing a large oil painting or whatever it is, the benefit on the other side, the reward of finishing is so great, so much greater, I think, than doing a smaller one in some sense. Because a smaller picture you can get done in an afternoon or a week or whatever, but to spend months and months and months on a single project is, you know, there's something to be said about that. And I do agree, there is a reward to that you just don't get with the quicker.
Well, I think that the sheer magnitude. So it's I don't want to say that it's greater than or less than, but it has a different volume to it, if that makes sense. It's like the first time you do your first push-up, or Chad, you run, and you and I have both run. It's like the first time you finally hit that mile. I ran a mile without stopping, and you're like, man, that's awesome, right? But then you run your first 4K, and you're like, whoa, there's just a different weight to it, right? Like, you know, there's a different oomph that comes with it. It's not greater than or less than, because even taking the first step is a huge success and a massive win, and cheer on yourself for that first step. But those milestones have a lot of oomph to them. And it's not always the scale or size, right? Because you can do small works of art that are very lengthy in the time investment and everything else. But the volume of it on a large piece, there's something just like an oomph to it that just has a different weight to it. It has a different level of joy that comes from completing it. You're like, holy crap, I finished it. And it was 6 feet by 6 feet. And it was just, man, it was a beast, you know. That 4K kicked my butt, you know.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Well, we've got something playing in the background here. Sorry for that, guys. A little bit of sports going on in the background from lunch, I believe, is what I had going on. Well, I may have finished this guy up, and I'm going to hold it up to the camera here for you guys. So again, I should put the cap back on this ink or else it will spill everywhere. And so I went back in and just did some nice hatching lines on this background here.
Nice. Yeah.
Just created a little bit of a texture to this gradient. Now, I don't truly think you can appreciate this gradient unless you actually see it in person. But you can see some of the detail work here on this feather. And I've kind of got it going a little bit.
That's nice.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. And the last little bit I like to do, because I like a nice clean edge, is I like to give myself a nice clean edge on this. And I'm going to pull this guy up here and see how that edge ends up. And if you're watching and you like a clean edge too, boy, you might appreciate this also. Give a slow little reveal here for all you masters and tape fiends. Beautiful. Oh, I love that. Look at that.
Is that ASMR? Is that what they call it? The kids calling it that these days?
Yeah, but I know this is going to make me sound ridiculous and old. I don't fully get it. I don't know. Is it just the sound, or is it the visual, or what is it?
I think it's both.
Look at that.
It's mainly sound, but
I thought it was like the sound, like, I don't know. But I know I just like the reveal of it. And boy, I wish I could get this as a better image for you guys. Let's see if I can hold it up to this camera. You guys can see some of that beautiful lilac, the coloration there. I think it's really kind of pretty. But when you see this in person, I'm excited to show my watercolor ladies on Thursday morning. I think that they will be like, yes, Seth, nicely done. And from them, that is a huge compliment. And is one of the most rewarding things. It's a great way to start my Thursday every day. And hopefully they enjoy it as much as I do as well, because it's a wonderful community that we have going on in those watercolor classes. And now I get to think about, well, what's my next practice going to be? What's my next exercise? Because my goal is to fill up this entire sketchbook, hopefully, before my birthday, which I don't know if that's going to happen or not, because I've got quite a few more pages.
when is your birthday?
Towards the end of July 20th. So we'll see. But I don't know if I'm going to get there or not, but I'm going to try and get kind of close and fill this sketchbook up and have some nice little works here. I should sign this one. Last time I tried to sign one of them, I botched it. I put my hand right in all the ink and just smeared it all over the place. I was so disappointed. I just said, you know what? I'm just going to leave it. It happened. It was like, you're at 99.9% completion, and then you just go to sign it, and you're like, come on, really? How could I just be so stupid? But it happens. It happens to the best of us. Or maybe it only happens to me, Chad. Maybe it's just Seth messing it up.
Just you.
Just me. We were talking about, art is for everyone. And we have so many students that are, doing a lot of wonderful things, but it's great. One of our students who's celebrating her birthday is going to be 87 years old and just started. She's getting into it. It's something that she just wants to be doing. And isn't that exhilarating? 87, Chad, and she's all in on painting. She's just going all in. She came in with about 10 different paintings today. And I tell you this, guys, because I think the youngest student we've had so far is 5, I think. Our typical age range is 6 to 8. But if you're a parent out there, I want to tell you what this one parent did. I won't share any names, but they called and they said, please consider my child for your art classes, please. You don't understand. Art is something that they do all day, every day. They constantly draw. They're constantly doing this. Would you be considered, if I brought in their artwork, can they please come and create around these other creative students? And before I even saw it, just the passion of the parent, you know what I said? Absolutely. Of course. We want to create that passion. You have a passion for your child to create. Clearly, your child does too. Bring them in. Let them be a part of this community. And it's exhilarating and exciting. And of course, you wonder, is a 5-year-old going to sit through that class? Are they going to learn? Are they going to absorb? And of course, our young children are just brilliant, right? They're so spectacularly absorbent of everything, right? But it was amazing. And so whether you're 5, I say that story because whether you're 5 or 87 or 92 or even older, right? We're not Legos capping off at 99. I think they changed that recently. But you can come in and be a part of this community and create. You can develop a new skill. You can find that passion that was perhaps lost or reignite some of the love that you had with something that you did as a kid or in high school or college, don't be afraid to come back in and get excited and to share it with everyone around you and with us. One of the great things is art has no age limit, right? Some of the physical sports you do, your body's not physically able to do some of those things as you change and age, but art, you can do it any way you want and in any stage of your life. So if you're out there and you're watching this, come and create with us. Join us on our V.A.A.S live sessions, Saturday evening, 6 to 8 like tonight, or 6:30 to 8 like tonight. But we want you to get involved. We want you to be a part of this community. And we have, 4-week intro classes. We got 8-week courses. We're going to have online assets and video tutorials as we continue to grow. And we also have our drop-in drawing sessions Thursday nights. And this summer, we have our summer camps, Chad. We're doing 4 weeks of summer camps in the month of July. We've got a number of students already enrolled. We are limited in our spots. So if it's something you're interested in doing, make sure you go and visit VAASLouisville.com, get set up, get signed up, and get registered today, because it's going to be an amazingly fun summer experience. Sounds like we're getting a little bit of thunder. I'm going to check the weather here, but we should be good. We got about 15 minutes or so, guys and gals. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the video. Chad's going to continue to work on his hand there. You guys can take a look and see how beautiful this is. He's just blowing me away with his talent and skill of creating these beautiful renderings. But take a look at that, guys. Wow. Well, I don't know who this is, and they've called twice now. Let me mute myself. Chad, take us away there.
All right. Yeah. So I'm starting to put in kind of a flat matte background. I'm using a charcoal pencil to do this. And I'm doing this for a couple different reasons. Normally I'll do it around the stage, maybe a little bit earlier, just to establish the darkest dark. And the model that I'm using, it's not necessarily accurate to the model, because in the model that I'm using, there's a lot of grays in the background, a lot of reflected light and all that. But I really want it to be more focused on the cast itself. So I like to do a flat black background, and I like it to be nice and matte. So I will use charcoal on this part. The rest I am using graphite. But the charcoal gives a nice flat matte color to it, or not color, but tone. If I use graphite, unfortunately, it gives a bit of a sheen to it. So, if I did all this with like a 8B or a 10B pencil, I could get it that dark, but it's going to have this shine on it, especially when it, hits the light in a certain way, or if you look at it in a certain way. So using the charcoal eliminates a lot of that. So that this just will help me when I get into basically entering into the final stages of this drawing. And so this is just kind of like a value control. I can go through and just make sure my darks are as dark as they need to be and the lights are as light as they need to be. It helps with it just helps with the tones that I'm using, the gradation, that kind of thing. So so I'll just go around the edge with a charcoal pencil, and then I'll use a charcoal stick and do kind of like a rectangular border around it. But it also lets the drawing kind of like a little bit. So that's another reason why I do that. So I can't hear you. You're muted.
Well, thank you for reminding me of that. I'm glad I was muted, but no, what a fun phone call, guys. An individual just saw us live and wanted to know if any of our classes were online and if their child could take them remotely, as they saw us live here. And they thought it was pretty neat what we were doing, went to our website, took a look at our classes, and we're hoping that we could do live art sessions. And unfortunately, they're like, well, we're not in Kentucky, we're in Texas. And I said, well, that's great. We really appreciate reaching out. We are going to continue to grow and offer things of different levels and different accessibility. And they said, oh my gosh, we love what you guys are doing. Thanks. And if you're out there, I didn't catch your name in that conversation, but thank you so much for joining us live and for reaching out. We're really excited. Again, we're going to continue to grow the Academy and the studio and provide a lot of different opportunities for artists all over the world. So we're incredibly grateful for that phone call. Sorry I had to step away, but what a fun time, Chad. People are watching and seeing what we're doing, and they're excited about what we're teaching and what we're teaching our students. So thank you guys very much for being a part of it and reaching out.
That's amazing phone call to get.
Yeah, I think so too.
I thought maybe it was from your best friend Spam.
Boy, I get like 60 of those a day.
He's calling me up. Like, I don't know you anymore. I broke up with you.
This is awesome. Yeah, that makes you feel good. Makes you feel like you're doing some things the right way, hopefully. You know, sharing some good information on these live sessions, giving a chance for people to see how we teach and our passion and the instruction that we have. And it's just incredibly rewarding when you know that people are resonating with what you're providing. So all of you guys watching and listening, thank you guys so very much. We hope that you're garnering some techniques, some skills, maybe something interesting and fun from two wild guys here. We've continued to grow our teaching staff and our student body, and it's just been an amazing 6 months, Chad. I mean, we've been operating the academy for a little over 6 months, and the community has been incredibly supportive, and the people and the students are just amazing. I mean, I think it's one of those things where you come into the academy every single day and you're just like, we're so grateful to be here. It's just, it's spectacular.
I still pinch myself whenever I walk into my studio area and classroom and all that. And just kind of, usually almost every day, take a little second break and just look around like, I cannot believe this is really happening. This is amazing.
Well, I think it's also fun to see some people's reactions that, you know, we talk to and they come in for the first time and they're like, oh, this studio is bigger than I thought it would be. You know, they're like, this is nice. You know, I'm like, yes, it is nice. You know, it's got that new car smell and everything, you know, the oil paints, and it's just a phenomenal experience. And, you know, I think, you know, we're going to continue to offer a lot of different classes, guys. Our new calendar should be out next week. So hopefully Monday or Tuesday of next week, middle of next week at the absolute latest for our next round of 8-week sessions. We're so excited for everybody's growth and the success that they have. Our student art show, I don't know if we talked about that too much, but Chad, how amazing was it to see young students see their artwork up on the wall? Not even young students, but just students in general, seeing their artwork up on the wall and hearing people in the background going, oh, that one's beautiful. Oh, that one looks so good. Did you see them do that? And then you see them smile so big because they're like, oh, it's, you know, it is good. People do like what I'm doing. I think the art show was just an unbelievable success for the sheer joy that it brought people.
Oh yeah, the students like, especially this last round when we really started pushing it, and we're like, hey, you know, let's, you know, in our classes we would talk about doing, you know, a final project, and we'd say, you know, this is one of those projects that we put in the art show at the end of the time, and students really got behind that. They loved that, and then to finally see it happen, like, it was really awesome just to watch them hop around each drawing and, you know, make their compliments to each other and everything. It was awesome.
And we're going to do that. So if you're interested in taking an 8-week course, we do that live art show upstairs in the gallery every 8 weeks at the end of an 8-week session. And students can select one or a couple of pieces that we go through and we pick and we put up in the gallery upstairs, and we leave them up and let people walk around and see what everybody's been producing, what everybody's doing. But we've got a little thing here that's happening that Chad's doing, and I want to kind of emphasize this because I think this is a good point. Chad, you're adding in a tonal background, right? Yep. But why are you adding that in, and what does it do to the values that you've created in the cast drawing?
Well, here's the problem. You missed our whole conversation about that. Because that's
did you just go over that? The phone call was great, but I missed the excellence of Chad. Well, so
yeah. I guess
I'll just have to go back and watch the video, and I apologize. But one of the things
I'll give you a quick summary. I said, right now I'm putting in this flat black, and I talked about using charcoal for that, even though the rest is graphite, because it's like a matte, there's no shine. So I could use a 10B, but there's gonna be so much shine on it, it's gonna be very hard to see. So I just said that, and then on top of that, I said the other thing this does is this gives like a true, not true, but as true as you're gonna get black. So then you can compare your other tones in the drawing to make sure you've got them as dark as you need them, and your light highlights as well, and your midtones. It's just a really good neutral like judgment call when you go back in. And I said I usually do that towards the end of a drawing, so then I can make any corrections that I need to make. So I don't know if you
really punch up those midtones and highlights, right?
Yeah. And I also said it's not true to the model. The model itself, if I look in the light box, it's got a lot of grays and things, and I could definitely do that if I wanted to. But for this drawing, the drawing I did, maybe for the first couple, I do like the simple flat black to really highlight the cast itself instead of its surrounding, that kind of thing. But I'm improving as well, and so as I've looked at other artists do cast drawings, I see the techniques they use. I still have a lot to learn and to grow in. I've seen some cast drawings that are just incredible, like just beyond what I'm doing as far as like the realism. I'm trying to get some of the marks in the actual plaster, like putting in that kind of detail. But I've seen some cast drawings that are just like photographic. It's just incredible.
And you can see the porous. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, what? Like, so, yeah. So anyways, some of them will use the background that similar way where they'll indicate maybe the shadow of the cast and, those kind of things. For me right now, I'm just doing a flat black because I really want to work on the details of the cast itself at this point. So, but as I get, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and what I like about it is from a teaching standpoint is it allows you to do exactly what you said, which is your comparison of values. It allows you to assess, are you getting full value range within the drawing, right? Like, because when it's white on white, you're comparing it to the lightest light. And now I know you're comparing it to the darkest dark here. And a lot of people like to work on a neutral gray background, right? Because you're comparing it to that neutral. But what I think is good is you're teaching that constant assessment, right? Like, okay, a lot of people would stop the drawing there and go, oh, nope, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, right? Many people would see this drawing and go, well, why do you need to do that, Chad? Because it already looks fantastic. But it's because you want at least one or two more last passes at it, right? You want to look at it and go, okay, wait a minute. Yes, where do I need to, darken this? My midtones are flat across my lighter tints, so how do I adjust this? Or, boy, that knuckle doesn't recede in space now anymore. It was the darkest dark, but it's not nearly as dark as it needs to be pushed back into that little bit of perspective that exists. And so I think from a teaching standpoint, whether it's accurate to the reference or not, it's allowing you to do a proper assessment. And that's one of the things that we constantly want to teach to all of our students at all the levels is you got to know when you want to look at it and go, I feel complete, right? I feel good about it. I feel complete. It's time to move on to the next work. And sometimes maybe that's never for some people, but by doing what you're doing with that dark value in the background, it's giving you one last big go to go, okay, now I'm looking at it versus my extreme white into my extreme black. And now I can see it for what it is.
Yeah. I'm distracted by the comment that just came by. It says, Chad,
did I finally get one?
Do what? It's V.A.A.S time. Said Chad needs a wizard hat.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. I will take that as the highest compliment because one of my goals this year, especially for Halloween, is to buy Gandalf's costume and staff. So I will have a wizard's hat by the end of this year, and I may just have to wear it on one of these Saturdays just for fun.
I think you should, and I think we're going to put you on the model stand for a Thursday night drawing.
Oh yeah, I would love to do that. Oh yeah, you need to put that beard to good use. Yes, thank you. I'm actually at an appointment next week to get it a bit trimmed, not shortened, but like trimmed up because I'd love to do like handlebars on my mustache for fun. And so I'll try to put it to good use a little bit, I guess. Yeah. So
that is absolutely fantastic. And honestly, we've done thematic Thursday night drop-in drawings. We've done, Wolverine. We've had ballet dancers. We've done some medieval themed. We try to make those Thursday night drawings a lot of fun. And getting Chad in a wizard's hat and a staff is going to be one of the highlights of the year. We will make sure that a few weeks of notice goes out for when that takes place so that everybody can come and take photos and point fingers and just be excited and have a lot of fun. Because again, when you have a beard like that, as V.A.A.S time says, you gotta you gotta let them know that that he is worth that beard in full time. Well, V.A.A.S time, we're so glad that you like the setup. We really appreciate it. This is a scenario where Chad and I and other individuals, we get guest artists, we get different students and things like that to jump on live. And the goal is to create with us. We want to create artwork as we discuss all things art, from techniques, skills, art history, even some random thoughts on teaching and educating here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. I've completed my watercolor and ink sketch here today, and Chad's been working on his reference cast. V.A.A.S time, we're so glad you joined us. Tim Psycho, thank you guys so much. Crushy Baishi, I apologize, guys. I'm horrible at words, apparently. But thank all of you for joining us, whether you're on Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or any of the other streaming platforms. We're so grateful for all of you guys do. Just as a reminder, give us a like, subscribe, and share. We do this almost every Saturday evening, 6 to 8 p.m. We bring in different artists, different guests, things like that. We're so grateful for all of your time, but it is time for us to wrap up, even though Chad and I could probably keep going for hours and hours and hours. But we are so excited to see you next week. So like, subscribe, and share so you don't miss. We'll see you next week, V.A.A.S time. We hope we see you next week as well. Chad, any last closing comments or thoughts for us? And we'll wrap up for this evening.
I only have to say one thing. You shall not pass.
Now you got to hold on to that for next time, brother. You can't say that unless you have the hat and the staff to go with it.
I know.
But it's good practice. I can't wait. The rehearsal is phenomenal. So we're going to get that going. Yes, we need the Wizards hat, V.A.A.S. We agree with you fully. We're so grateful that you guys joined. What an exciting time. We got a wonderful phone call from Texas, hoping to take some classes and get some things going. It's amazing how much fun it is to work and create together. So join us next Saturday, 6 to 8 p.m. here on the Visual Arts Academy and Studio Live. We'll see you then.
See y'all.